Did you do anything differently this time? I know you're flipping off the camera.
Oh, I'm
Hi, I'm Vinny with Veloso Publishing, and I'm here with Chuck Redman, author of Low Worm Diet. Welcome, Chuck.
Thanks, Vinny.
First things first, let me see the book because I haven't actually seen it, so I wanted to get my first reaction on camera. Oh yeah, oh yeah, the print on this came out really nice. The interior looks killer. They did a good job with the. Take a look at the. We did like a 10%. Yeah. What is this? 10 or 20, maybe 15% grade back. We put the little worm in there, which is cool. That came out. That looks nice and clean.
Yes.
We got a sharp image. But the other thing that happens when you print on cream paper, the ink will spread because if you look closely at the ink, at the paper, it's got little channels and little creases, so the ink sort of spreads. You don't get that sharp. So when I do a book that has pictures in it, we'll do it on a bright white paper, like and there's no crinkles, and then your images come out very, very sharp. However, the downside of that is reading the book is a little more hard on your eyes because it's a bright white.
Oh, yeah.
So we take the trade-off. When it's an image like this, it isn't extremely important and it's just sort of a little thing to add fun. Yeah. Then we go lighter.
I never would have noticed any of those things.
Yeah, well, that's my job. But I love it. I think the back cover photo looks good. I like the colors. We matched the colors off of the cover. Tell us real quickly about the artist from the cover.
Yeah, Ricky Congello is a friend of mine. We're in acting class together.
Okay.
He's a young guy. He's a terrific actor, and he's a terrific artist.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when I found out that he does, cartoon characters and even specializing in Disney type characters, I thought he'd be the perfect person, and he's my friend and everything. So I think he did a terrific job.
Is this freehand or is this computer done, or how did he do this?
That I don't know.
But he may have done this in layers because you see the characters in the back are a little softer. There's almost an opacity on them. But he did an excellent job. So thumbs up.
I told him kind of generally the idea of what I wanted, but he figured out the details of what kind of animals to use and
it's wonderful
costumes and stuff.
Yeah, good job, Ricky. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah,
we both love it, and I'm sure the readers will too.
Yeah.
So I also want to talk about the name Chuck Redman. That is your name, or is that your stage name? Because it sounds like hold on, it sounds like an action hero's name. Chuck Redman, Fists of Blood. Right? It's like a superhero or a super action. Is it actually your name?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Charles.
Right.
Legally and everything, but Charles always sounded formal, so I never used it in just for official things. So Chuck. Yeah.
But you got a tough guy's name. That's kind of cool.
That I never thought
really?
of that.
It hit me like the first time, like the minute I got your
Chuck
email.
Norris.
Yeah, there's Chuck Norris
Chuck Connors.
and Redman and just the whole Redman, Chuck Redman. It just sounds like Sounds like a tough guy's name. It's even almost like, Chuck Redman's outside.
Man,
it's the same thing with Vinny. It sort of has these connotations.
Yeah.
So I want to talk first about, there's so many things to go over, but I want to get right into why I like this book and why I wanted to publish it. And the first thing that grabbed me, and I told you this, was the dialogue. I think dialogue is extremely important, and even if this were to be made into a movie, very little has to be done in writing a screenplay because you've already written so much of the dialogue. Like, think about a Tarantino movie that everybody likes. So, like, everybody likes Pulp Fiction, and one of the reasons why is he's got this very creative dialogue. And what you were able to be able, first off, I like a lot of it because I want to feel like I'm with the characters. Too much description is important, but too much, it just seems laborious. And you have somehow captured the real context of what a couple in your age group, I would imagine, sounds like having these conversations. How did you go about that?
Thank you. Well, I do a lot of reading, and you know, I've done a lot of reading my whole life, and I've tried to read good stuff. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there that's not so great, and I don't read a lot of modern books, even though, you know, here's a modern book, but I mostly read, you know, classic literature, and I mean a lot of stuff from the 1800s and a lot of stuff from the early and middle 1900s, and I just think the writing was better, and I guess the dialogue was, I think, better.
How do you think you captured, though, what was it about the couple? Like, it's a couple that's based on you and your wife. I mean, it almost felt like you put a recorder on in your living room and left it on for an evening and then just transcribed it because it feels so real.
Yeah, that's what I like reading or listening to or seeing in a movie. So I guess that's just the way I wanted it to sound. Yeah, just true to life is what I wanted, so I'm glad, you know, that makes me happy.
Well, it really works. It really works.
Oh, well, thanks. I don't like using a lot of words, more words than I need to use, so it's not a very long book, you know, because of that. I tried not to use any more words than I absolutely had to, and I guess that's partly true in the dialogue. And I just wanted it to sound real, but also a little bit funny and sarcastic and ironic and all, because that's the tone of the book. It's satire, and so I wanted them to have kind of, you know, a little humor going on.
The whole book has a whole humorous slant to it, but what I would say is it's not slapstick. It's not like physical comedy, and it's not sitcom comedy. It's a little more intellectual, subtle comedy. This book will appeal to people with a little more, I would say, literary intellect, someone who's willing to really pay attention. You know, it's not a skimmer. Does that make sense? Like you're not going to just whip through this, and there really isn't any sections where you feel like, oh, this is starting to lag, I'll just kind of skip these two I just did it. Because we all do that when we read. Like, we kind of skip through something where it feels like it's slowing down. And the trick in writing a book like yours is to not let it slow down. And the dialogue, you know, you tend to read every word because you're sucked in.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
And that's what I'm saying. So the pace of your book is superior. Like, it's very, very, very well done. Someone who's going to appreciate that is somebody who kind of gets the subtle humor. It's not falling down the stairs humor. It's more crafty.
Well, it's like, well, my wife read the book and she said, Chuck, there are too many big words, and what did you mean by this? She wasn't born in this country, so some things, you know, if there's too much irony in it, or language that doesn't sound standardized to her, she'll have trouble with it. So I tried to, I didn't want somebody to just be able to read the book straight through and have everything spelled out for them in black and white, you know.
Yeah.
I like
It's got layers.
I like people to have to kind of think a little bit, wonder, what did he mean by that, and what's really going on here, and
Well, you're giving them more for their money, I always say, because when you like when you buy a music album, the ones that are just a loop with lyrics, you got one or two listens. I got it. I get it. There's not, you might like it, but the ones that you cherish are the ones that you can hear something new and feel something new, and the lyrics are something you have to decipher a little bit, and they're just more fun and more engaging. And that's what you've created here is a book like that. And so this is something that I always talk about: write for your audience. And that's very important, because if you try to write a book for everyone, you wrote it for no one. So when I say this appeals to intellectuals, people who get subtle humor, it's not for someone who's looking for a slapstick or something, Okay. When I was in high school, I had an English teacher that had a sign on the wall that said, I think something like, a week, let me get this right. I think it was, a week without reading, talk becomes flavorless. And
wow.
what I took that, I saw it every day for a year. And what I meant that to say is that by reading, you get constantly introduced to new words or words that are not as frequently used, but in a different context, and they start to become part of your vocabulary.
Yes.
Also, deeper thought, slower thought becomes part of your intellect. And so your book satisfies that. So, I used to be a former school teacher. If I had AP students, absolutely, this would be a book I'd recommend. It would be a book I would assign. And that's 100%.
Wow. It's so nice for you to say that, because that's really, it means a lot to me to hear that. Because when you write a book, you don't know if it's gonna. You just don't know if it's any good or if it's a bunch of garbage or what, until somebody else reads it and tells you, and
it's the right
so
person.
Nice.
It's also important to have the right person give you feedback, because if you're making something and, a lot of the music that I write, it's not for everyone. If some of it's, I don't think you need to have a music degree, but you need to understand more about music than just what somebody who DJs and stuff does. You have to know a little bit more to fully appreciate it. It's like jazz. Yeah, we all, you could listen to jazz and hey, it's great. But if you really understand jazz and you can see that they're creating their own melody lines in the moment over complex chord changes, and the more inventive it is, the more exciting it is, especially if you understand it. So for someone who reads a lot, because it's part of my gig, when I read this, I was like, yeah, man, this is, because a lot of times people send me books and I have to burn through it because I have to decide rather quickly.
Yeah.
And this one, I just was like, okay, let's slow down and enjoy this, because, I laughed out loud several times.
Oh my goodness.
Because because it's just like, it just hits you at kind of the right spot. And I like that your character is not, I don't want to say an anti-hero, but we all like to be the hero of our own story. But you made the main character have all kinds of imperfections that the wife is happy to point out.
Yes.
As most wives are.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
But not but mostly, yeah.
So did your wife take any offense to this?
No, she, and she knows, and I keep telling her that, Vicky's not you, honey.
Okay.
But some of you is in her, and then Glenn is not me, but yeah, so there's some of me in there.
Well, a lot of the great writers have done that, and it's a way to keep your characters real. When I write a story, almost all of mine are either based on me or somebody that I know, and that way I'm able to keep the characters real. Because would that person actually do that or wouldn't? It kind of puts that boundary. Because you could write a book that's over the top, and that's fine. It's that kind of book. But this one, you want to make sure that people believe, that this isn't fantastic, that this is possible.
Yeah. You want to feel that like it's real, and these are real people, and you care about them. And
is this your first book?
It's my second.
Okay, your second one, right? Could you tell us what the first book is?
Yeah, the first book is called A Cottonwood Stand.
That's right. Okay.
And it's and it was published by a small press in New Mexico, in Santa Fe, and they that book it's also satire. It's set in Nebraska because that's where I'm from.
Okay.
And it's kind of two stories that are connected, and one is historical. It's got Native American people from back in before the white people came.
Okay.
And then it's got a modern story in a small fictional town.
Okay.
So they do end up, tying in together, and but it's just kind of a gentle satire about human nature and our modern society and the way we've the direction we've gone ever since back in the old days of the Indians, and how we got to where we are now. And it's so it's a little harder book to read than this book because the narrator talks in dialect.
Oh, wow.
He's basically the narrator. I mean, I won't tell you who the narrator is, but he talks like Gabby Hayes or something, some guy like that from the old westerns.
Okay.
So it's kind of a little bit harder to read.
Do you feel that this book is better than your first one? Because the answer should be yes.
It should be yes, but I don't think it's better.
Really?
I think it's a little more readable and a little more relatable, I think.
Did you do anything differently this time? I know you're flipping off the camera.
Oh, I'm... No, that's just...
Okay, yeah, it's as good. No, did you do anything with this book that you didn't do last time, that you maybe learned from last time, or that, when you have a second shot at something?
Well, I think the dialogue might be a little better, a little sharper in this book, because because of writing this book, I got into acting. So I started learning about, how dialogue is in good drama or a good comedy, and so maybe I got a little better at writing dialogue. I mean, I think they're both kind of very original. I don't think either book there's ever been a book like either of the two books, because they're a little, unusual. But the first book maybe more so because of the way the narrator talks and the way the characters talk, like the Native American characters, the way they're talking. It's just a little less normal.
Yeah. You've sort of found a home at Velocil because we like,
offbeat stuff.
Yeah, because to me that's what excites me. The same thing when you want any kind of art. I want to see something that maybe I haven't seen before. Everybody always talks about what's offensive. I'm offended by that word. I'm offended by that. That's the age we live in. You said this and I'm offended and blah, blah, blah. And I feel, to me, the most offensive thing is lack of creativity. It just offends the hell out of me. And so when somebody does a song or a book, and it's like, wow, you just are imitating something else. And I'm not saying it's not okay to do that because that's how we learn. by, you pick, and I always say if you're going to imitate and steal from the best, but then somehow put your own voice in it. And that's when this one of the first things I noticed, that this guy has his own voice.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's one of my pet peeves in any kind of art, and music or literature. There's so much of it that's just full of cliches, and it's all been done before. And I just think I guess people do need to express themselves. Everybody has that need, but unless you really have something original to say, you shouldn't try to write a book or write a song
Right. Well, I always say there should be a 7-day waiting period to buy a guitar, because it's like, oh man, there's some garbage out there, and I always go, back in my day. Well, back in my day, if you were going to put out a record, it was very expensive. Studio time was a fortune. Pressing was a fortune. And the same applied to books. When Velocil first started, we had to print all the books that we sent to the distributor first. So the minimum was $1,500, but to get the unit price down, we'd have to do $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. And that's a big check to write.
Yeah.
And so you're very careful about what you put out. You just don't randomly, willy-nilly put stuff out. You really spend time. You really think about it. You really craft it, because you're going to say, I'm going to spend a lot of money on this. And whether it's going to do well or not doesn't matter. It's how I want to spend my money. And now you could just record a song or with stuff with your phone. You can write something and post it on a blog. We live in the age of, they've conditioned, especially the younger generation, to constantly create content. And what they're not realizing is you're just creating content for them. Yeah, you can make money on YouTube. Yes, you can, but the ones who are really making the money are the providers. They're the ones that make the most money. And they figured out, hey, we could start a television station and put up all this money and pay for all these actors, or we could just have you guys do it for us and make you feel like you're a star. But for the most part, the product better be good, because there is not star quality that exists in I think so much in social media and books. True star quality, where you couldn't be easily replaced with somebody else.
Yeah, and since there's so much of it out there, it kind of just lowers everybody's standards. And it's just I grew up in the 50s and 60s. You could turn on the radio and whatever you hear, it's going to be good. I mean, you may not love certain types of rock and roll, but still it's going to be good and original. And
it seems to be something different that is the amount of money you make or the amount of followers you make or what. It doesn't matter what you have to do. It's just do it to get to the end result. And I think a lot of the art is lost, which is why, again, Velocil exists, because I want to have a channel where, when I don't say channel, but a format where authors can get something of quality out and they're not stopped by the stop gate of, well, is this going to make a lot of money? And I think that's, if you start trying to make art with that in mind, you're guaranteed to make, mediocre art, because you're simply trying to make something for the masses, which is the point I made about your book. There is a specific audience for this. And as much as we want to think everybody will love my book, intellectual people who have maybe have some more education, people who have actually read a considerable amount of books, that's your audience. Book club people, oh man, we are going to send this sucker to so many book clubs because this is a book club book. There's so much stuff to discuss. there's so many things for people to get into and argue about. And it's great. That's what real art does. It stimulates conversation, stimulates dialogue, stimulates discussion and interplay. You've made that. And that's one of the reasons I'm like very proud to have this on Veloso, because it's just like, dude, yeah, it's boom. It's that's what it is. Your original career was an attorney. Tell me just a little bit about that. You have a PhD?
Well, JD.
JD, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wanted to be a lawyer, so that's what I became.
Okay.
My first job after I passed the bar was as a deputy public defender in L.A. So I did that. I was a public defender for about 9 years, and then got burned out because even though I really learned so much. That was the best training you could possibly get if you wanted to be a trial lawyer. Mm-hmm. And I loved a lot of it, but I loved working in juvenile court, especially. But I finally got burned out. They put me back. They wouldn't let me stay in juvenile court. They put me in adult court, and it was just it wasn't the same. You're just on a treadmill, doing plea bargains and stuff, and just I got burned out, and so then I went into private practice. I did that for about 8 years, and then because my wife is an immigrant, after we got married, we had to go through the immigration process for her green card. So I had gotten interested in immigration law, so I started doing immigration law, and so I got to the point where that's all I was doing was immigration cases. In private practice, and it was good. I met a lot of really great people, but I was under a lot of stress. It was a little too, being in private practice on my own, I was just too stressed and too worried about everything. So they had some openings at INS. It used to be called INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and so I applied for a trial attorney job with INS, and I got that job, and then did that for 22 years. And INS became part of the Department of Homeland Security when that department was created. So I just stayed in that agency for 22 years, and
Okay.
Worked in immigration court, and then I retired.
Okay. Animal rights. Tell us a little bit how that started, what your feelings about it, the whole deal.
Yeah, I think I've always been, and I think you have too, from what you tell me, an animal lover, and even as a kid, I mean, we'd eat steak and hamburgers and roast beef and all kinds of meat and chicken and stuff. I grew up with that, but when I became an adult and started, I guess, thinking more about what that means, I guess I had a little kind of growing guilt inside of me about that. So in law school, I did some work for an animal rights organization, and then reading all their literature and stuff, I finally decided to become a vegetarian, and I did, and I've stuck with that the rest of my life. And my wife turned vegetarian a few years after we married, and
So how many years has that been?
we've been married 42 and a half years.
So you've been vegetarian for over 40 years.
Yeah, it was almost 50 years.
Okay.
I guess it'll be 50 years pretty much next year.
So one of the exciting things about this book is that all the proceeds are going to is it a nonprofit?
It's a nonprofit, yeah.
We're going to tell us about the nonprofit, what they do, and why you selected them.
My acting teacher, her name was Mary Pat Davis, and she was an actress and singer, and she has this amazing animal rescue nonprofit. She started it, and she's been rescuing mostly dogs. I think occasionally she'll rescue other animals, but mostly dogs. For years she's rescued thousands, literally, and found homes for them and gotten them, veterinary care that they needed. And it's just, sometimes she's up practically the whole night, working on these rescues and getting the animals to the vets and getting them into their forever homes and all, or finding foster people to take care of them, for periods of time. So she dedicates so much of her time, and I'm sure much of her money too, to her rescue organization. And
the name again. So you're donating 100%.
Yeah. So she and I signed an agreement that that 100% of the royalties of this book will go to her nonprofit, which is called All for Love Animal Rescue.
Okay. And if somebody watching was interested in donating, they could go to her website.
Yeah, she's got a website, AFLAR, All for Love Animal Rescue. They save, almost every day that I talk to her, she says, I just got off the phone, we just rescued a litter of puppies from this abandoned, dog, and we're looking for homes for him. Or I just got this dog to a vet where he's having surgery right now. I'm waiting for the doctor to call me, to find out how he did with the surgery. I mean, this is just.
Yeah, well, one of the things that you'll find, and I would love to meet her because she sounds like my kind of person, because what you'll find with a lot of nonprofit people, especially the ones who are the heart and soul of it, is they're very passionate people, very passionate about the project. It's not like they didn't take this job to get a job. They started this usually with no money and usually, just because they wanted to do it. And it's always exciting to meet those people because of their level of passion. And then also acting. So she's got this art side to her. So yeah. She's my kind of person. I would certainly like to meet her at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, she's terrific, and she's a wonderful acting teacher. And
so, as far as acting, have you actually gotten any roles? I mean, it doesn't matter paying or non-paying, just anything that you've got to do.
Yeah, I've gotten some. My first year was probably my best year for some reason, and that was just before COVID.
Oh, okay.
2019. I got a part in a feature film. Not a major part, but a supporting part, and it was a good film. It was a very low budget film called Carlos Through the Tall Grass, okay. And it was a wonderful story, and they filmed the whole thing in the city of Whittier.
Okay.
And Whittier College helped out a lot with the production, and we all volunteered our time and stuff for it, and they made, it turned out to be a really good film, and it's been in festivals.
Okay, is there any place now that we can see it? Is it on Hulu or Amazon Prime? Any of those?
No, because I think he still has hopes of getting it, finally selling it and getting it streaming somewhere. But
distribution. This is the thing. Distribution is a bitch, which is why. It's another thing about Velocil. I wanted to provide worldwide real distribution, which is not as easy to get as one would think. And that's why I always say self-publishing. So, I mean, I always say if you wrote something and you just want to have it for friends and family, yeah, self-publishing is great. If you've written something on this level and you want to at least have a shot, you need killer distribution. It doesn't mean that it's going to sell, but in the event that that it could, it's all there for you. And because you have the same as every other major label does. There's no difference other than the fact that they can afford to buy end caps and other things like that. You know, maybe someday we'll have that kind of budget to throw money around like that. But
so.
yeah, I know. But you know, in the meantime, distribution is a big deal. And so someone who makes a film, again, it's a passion project, and those things are sometimes some of the best things you'll get to see. Sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're lower budget, but sometimes they're just amazing, and they're held up by the corporate thing, or is this going to make money, or the getting distribution. And so yeah, let's hope he does. Well, not to give away the book, but it starts out with a husband and wife talking about, they're watching the Oscars, and the husband makes a promise that he's going to bring his wife to the Oscars the next year, which is a great, it's like, okay, and it's a believable thing, and it's like, okay, well, what's going to go on with it? It's not opening up with a gunfight. It's opening with, but that's why it's cool. What advice do you have for anybody in your age group that is considering writing a book, or maybe they've started it, they want to do it, but it's like, well, I'm over, I'm in retirement age, or I'm over 50, I'm over 60, whatever, and I don't, what would you have to say to those people?
Well, it is tougher, a little tougher to come up with the energy, physical and mental energy to do something like this when you're older. You have to expect it's going to take a lot of energy, but if you have the energy and if you have an idea, unless there's a story that just sets off a light bulb in your brain, that, whoa, my God, there's a story there, and nobody's ever told that story. Unless you have something like that, there's no point, because if you're just writing a book because you feel like you want to write a book.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think before you throw it out in the world, and I often say, you're not going to write your greatest thing without written. You have to trip and fall a few times. You have to, like you said, you got a lot of on the job. Even though you went to school for it, you got a lot of on the job training in trial court. You're attributing your success, or whatever you want to call it, as an attorney, to those years in the trenches where you learned a lot. And the same thing I feel like with writing, some of my better writers they worked as editors, they wrote smaller articles, they've been doing it for a while. So it's a muscle, and you can start learning it at any age. You're right. That's excellent advice, is find the story.
They love the idea of being creative and writing something or producing something, but there's no story in them that is just dying to be told.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you a good example. So I just published a book by Hector Rivera, who's a first-time author, and he's never written anything. He's a school teacher. He teaches. He's actually been Teacher of the Year twice.
You mentioned him.
Cool guy. And I just recently went to his book release event. He is not what I would call like an accomplished writer. He had to get help. But man, does he have a story. So it's one of those things, like this is a guy who's intelligent and said, I don't know what I'm doing. I have this amazing story, this thing that happened to me that I want to tell this story because I think it'll help other people.
Yeah.
I need help. So brought in editors. He went through several editors. And that's the thing. So again, back to what you said, the story is the most important. And I always say this when you're in making friends or in making interesting conversation at a party, have a good story, and sometimes have it ready to go. Have your intro, have your middle, and have your ending, and know how to keep it relatively short. That's how you become the life of the party. Start with that. I call it the jump start. A lot of books, yours doesn't really quite have it. It doesn't need it. Some books you need to have a jump start. It cannot start, well, it was a warm day in spring, blah, blah. You have to have something that it's called reverse storytelling, where you have something big happen, and then you go, well, how did this happen?
Yes.
And a lot of movies start that way too, where, all the James Bond movies do, or something big happens, and then you go, okay, well, perhaps we should start from the beginning. And well, now you have everyone's interest. So again, it's the art of storytelling, and your book has a solid story, and so I'm glad you said that, because I think it is excellent advice, and coming from you, who's written this book, it's a great source.
I sent you a query about my book, and you called me, I think, right away. You emailed me right back. And I was shocked, to get a response that fast. But you said you're really into animal rights.
Yeah.
It's such an important, thing for you and your family and your circle, and that you like the idea of the royalties being donated to some animal rescue or animal rights organization, and that's somehow that just clicked just right. I just was.
And it's a good book. I mean, you can love all the animals you want, but if you sent me a piece of crap, then I can't publish it. But you're not the only one. Randy Shields, who's, Randy Shields is an excellent writer, and he's done 2 books with me. He's like you. He's got a little political slant to him. And he presents a celebration of animals, like a real celebration. Like he goes and helps the frogs across the street. I mean, and his first book is just full of great stuff like that, and full of great. He's a cool photographer too, so we did that. And then Maggie, we just did her book, My American Dream, and this is another talk about immigrant. So she came here from Poland, and she got a job, different jobs, some, working for rich families and things like that, but eventually ended up working at a university, and found out that this university was funding and doing animal experiments, and it absolutely horrified her. So she's moved, like literally almost against the institution that she worked for. And so it's kind of cool to have people that share, your ideals. It's not like I wouldn't, you don't have to be an animal activist to be on Velocil. It's just, I always say, I have to pick my authors very carefully, because I can only do so many a year, 6, maybe 7. I'm not going to just crank them out. I have other gigs that I do to make money. So this is always going to be, you have to fund this somehow, but it's always going to be the passion thing. And I always end up becoming friends with the author, because you spend a considerable amount of time working on these. And some guys, some authors I had to spend a lot of time. And one woman I spent 3 years getting her book together.
Wow.
Her story is amazing. It's called Midlife Addiction, and she wanted to talk about how her son died of a drug overdose. And she had never written a book before either, so I had to walk her through it. Great story, but not a writer. So how do you get someone to how do you get that great story? So you have to sometimes spend some money to get it there. So we have to hire editors, we have to hire proofreaders, we have to hire, and I can do so much, but my time is also limited. So it's cool. It's great we met. And what I hope for this, you hope for every book, is, you're an actor, and you'd always kind of want to see your book made into a movie. I think that's everybody's fantasy, especially if you're an actor. And I think your book, is already, like I said earlier, it lends itself to being easily transformed into a screenplay because much of the dialogue is already taken care of. And wouldn't that be ironic if Low Worm Diet was turned into a movie and you got to take your wife to the Oscars to see your book?
Yes, in my dreams.
We call that poetic justice. That would be cool.
Oh my.
Well, Chuck Redman, the tough guy. Chuck Redman, thank you so much for coming by, and we really like having you on Velocil, and hopefully you'll bring us something again soon. And we have some work to do this year to get people knowing about this.
Oh, thanks, Vinny. I'm just really grateful that I met you and found you, and that found a home for my book with you, and I'm just really happy about that.